Hi, this is Stephen Barrett from Merritt Valley Community College. This is for CSIT 256, Computer Architecture and Assembly Language. Well, let's see what happens in this video. There's another video that focuses on the difference between pass by register, or using registers for passing parameters and using the stack for passing parameters. What I really want to kind of hope I get into are these first three things right here, which is I want to write a procedure. I want to write more than one procedure. And between the procedures I write, we'll see pass by reference and we'll see pass by value. So that's how much I'm hoping to tackle in terms of this video. Do you remember back from Chapter 5? The overview for Chapter 5 rewrote a demo that was for Chapter 3. And just peeking at what this, and this is the actual demo from Chapter 5. I'm about to amend it, but let's just take a look at what's here first. It prompted the user for the number of apples sold, prompted the user for the number of oranges sold, calculated the total sold, and then it displayed everything. So that was the demo, or it was referenced in the demo for Chapter 5. I think it was the overview for Chapter 5, kind of showed sort of the punchline. Well, what I want to do in this video is I want to modify this file yet once again. So I'm going to say mucked up, mucked up for Chapter 8. And then the last, so that modification in there, that was the Chapter 5 revisions. This might take more than one part, and I do apologize if it does. I'd rather do it the way I would do in the classroom, which is to try to explain what it is that I'm doing as I'm doing it. And right now I'm just recording the changes that that this is. So that I'm doing here. So Chapter 8, added procedures. Okay. Well, and just let's, if I didn't do this before, let me just run it again just to refresh our memories, what's being done. So enter the number of apples sold, 7, enter the number of oranges sold. Let's say 2 of them were returned, and then the total fruit sold was 5. So I echoed back to the user, this is what you entered, the apples sold and oranges sold. So I'm echoing back what the user entered, and then the calculation part is here. And I think when I said back in the prior video, it looks like Groundhog Day because we seem to be doing similar things. And it's like, isn't there an easier way to do this? And well, yes, and that's what we're going to take a look at here. The idea is if I want to have a procedure for getting an integer from a user, and I want to make it generic, I want to be able to kind of look at these two pieces right here and figure out how I can write a procedure that will get the int from the user. So let me, let's cheat. So down here it says insert additional procedures here. Well, if I don't know how to write a procedure, I look back at main. So main proc, let me just copy this, main proc, and bring this down here. Okay, I will rename it. Main end p. Let me bring this down here. And the one thing I remember I have to do is I have to do a return. And what will happen, by the way, if we don't have a return, well, it's kind of like, in the main, if we don't have exit, it'll continue to run, which in this case here, since I'm adding a procedure, if I didn't have this exit, it would then go and run this procedure. But at the end of this return, or I'm sorry, at the end of this procedure, if I don't have a return, it'll keep running. Java only had a return for when something returned a value, but in assembly, procedures have returns. Okay, this procedure I want to do is I want to get, or how about, how's this sound? Prompt and get int from user. Okay, And what I will do is let me describe it before I do it. Procedure displays a prompt. Displays a prompt. Gets an int. And stores it into memory. The input, well, I think one thing I'm going to want in the input is edx. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. Let me go and let's take the code. I'm going to take one of these. Apples sold, oranges sold, right? And let me just go and copy one of these, and then I'll genericize it. And then I can figure out what the registers I'm going to use, what those will be. So here, let me say prompt user for int. And so now here, this edx, what we can do is assume, and that's what we'll do as an input. So in terms of an input, one of them is going to be edx, is going to be offset to prompt to display. Okay. And so that'll display the prompt. Now call read int, EAX will have the value from the user. We want to then go and stick that back into memory. But we need to know where to put it. So if I actually, instead of sticking it here, if I stick it into what EDI is pointing to, so then I can have as another input, that's another input, EDI address of SD word to store input. Okay. And the output, in a sense, so if that's the address is coming in, the output, so EDI, storing user input here. Okay, so I've been writing the doc, and for those that have me for data structures, this is like the Java doc comments. The @param, these would be the parameters. The @return, this would be the return. The method description. So it's just not automated. And by the way, those Java doc comments, the ancestor of them was what we're doing right here in assembly. So it's not that we're mimicking Java. Java was mimicking assembly. We're just now doing the assembly that the Java was mimicking. Okay. So store EAX to memory referenced by EDI. So if I did this right, and I'm talking and coding, which is a really dangerous thing, this now here is generic. And so all I need to do is to set it up is I need EDX and then EDI. So if I come back to the top of the program, that means when this part here, I want to do the call, the prompt, and get int from user. I still, well, I can leave these comments in this because I want to prompt the user for the apple sold. Here's the apple sold prompt because the EDX has to be loaded. The other thing I want to do differently, though, is I want to load into EDI the offset of apple sold. because that's what that procedure expects. And so if I do that, then now here's the call to the generic prompt and get int from user. Once again, if I did this right, let's do the same thing, but getting orange sold. So let's prompt for the orange sold. So here EDX will be loaded. And then the other thing I want to do is load into EDI, the offset of orange sold. Because we'll stick that back into memory and we'll call the prompt and get int from user. I have no idea if this is going to compile. Let's see what happens. Holy crap, it compiled. I'm sorry. Yeah, I have confidence in my coding abilities. Okay, it compiled, but let's see what happens when I try to run it. And let me use different values than I did previously. So the apples sold, let's say there were 86, and the oranges sold, to make it easier, let me do minus 16, and then I should get 70 when we're done. There's the 86 and the 16. So what I did is, and this is one of those things when you think of doing a procedure, when you started to realize you're writing code repetitively, that's when you realize, hey, there should be a procedure for this. And I think I said that aloud in the demo for chapter 5. And so what I just did here is I basically genericized the prompt and get int from user. So the prompt and get int, we load EDX with the address of the prompt that we want to display. And then we load EDI with the value, with the address of the place in memory that we're going to store the data to. Now, this prompt and get int from user, then this here is the part that's generic. So the right string, it assumes EDX already has the offset, and then EAX is going into EDI. What I want to do for giggles and grins, and I feel as if this is going to work into a part 2, but I just for any doubting Thomases, I want to move into EAX 42, and I'm just going to say here, load meaning of life into EAX. Let's do, just so we can see what was there, a dump regs. And just out of curiosity, if I call a dump regs after this and I call a dump regs after this, let's just see what's happening. And okay, so 16 to the 1, 2 times 16 is 32, plus 10 is 42. So there, the meaning of life is there. Let me enter in my apple sold, and ooh, I just lost my meaning of life because I had put that value in there, minus 2. Oh God, I really lost the meaning of life. What I'm trying to get at, I don't know if I'm getting at it well, is that my procedure destroys EAX. If I wanted to hold on to that EAX, at least for that point, I almost sense would need to preserve, like in theory, I would need to do a push here to preserve prior to calling the dump regs. What I can do is I can add here uses EAX. And by doing this, behind the scenes, we'll do a push and a pop. It'll push EAX onto the stack, run this, pop off the stack into EAX, restoring it. And so at least for that first chunk there, if I did this right, so 2A, there's our meaning of life. Our meaning of life is still there. Our meaning of life is still there. So at least up to that point, I preserved the meaning of life. And so what I'm getting at here is that the uses is that whatever register or registers that we're overwriting, we should have a uses prompt for it so that we can preserve, so that our procedure has no damage other than what's documented, has no damage to memory. Oh crap, it's okay, that's the end of part 1. Come back for part 2, the exciting conclusion of this crappy